Yes, so.
You guess so. That's not. Got to have the go-to can-do attitude for 2023.
Kermit the Frog.
Hi ho, Kermit the Frog here.
Kermit the
So you guys
Frog
do all
here.
the impressions. I can't do any of this shit.
Bert.
You
Hold
know,
on. Bert, Bert.
Morrissey.
You're young,
Morrissey
Bert.
sounds like Kermit the Frog, right? There's a club if you'd like to go. You could meet somebody who really loves you. Yeah.
The Rainbow Connection.
The Rainbow Connection. Girlfriend in a coma. I know. It's serious.
YouTube,
And
you're
we're
welcome. This is the kind of content you could be having if we even had a Patreon. We should do that
Look,
again.
you can't curse now in the first 15 seconds, so I figured I'd sing.
I already cursed in 5 seconds by accident. I'm like the worst with this lately. It's okay. We're not monetized anyway. Hello, YouTube. Hello, listeners. How are you guys?
Wait, we're not?
Hi, everybody. Hi, everybody.
Oh, this is the screen. All right. We are live whenever you want to. Who's hosting? GP, right?
GP.
Yes, I will be hosting. I want to bring this up so we can. Cthusiast starting off chat. Super Randy, shall we say hi, Sinstress? Welcome, everybody. Okay. We're going to do a short pause, and then I'll come in with the opening line. Here we go. Let's do it on a tabletop. Today on.
Don't make gestures over the intro.
Go ahead.
Was that the official point? Are we live?
Yeah, that's the official point. You can stop making the rude
gestures.
gestures
I need it to
behind
be this.
the intro.
I need it to not be just like that, like a wave, like go on, move on. We're on.
One of these days we'll get our intro.
I'm going to send you a documentary called Wayne's World, and he had a really tight crew. And then he, you know. Anyway, everybody, hi, welcome back to Press B to Cancel. My name, not important today, but it's Guy Prime, and I am joined by my good friends, Sinistar 77. I never know, should I mention the numbers, or can I just say Sinistar?
Hey, I take it both ways.
In our most intimate moments, I don't add the numbers or include the numbers. I just, the God-given
Only when
Sinistar.
you're talking dirty to me do you give me the 77.
Oh yeah.
Hi.
We should really just restart. Do we need to cut the feed?
I ain't doing this over again.
No, this is gold or some other sort of precious metal.
It's something, yeah.
Sinistar, how are you doing today?
I'm well. How are you, sir?
Doing well, thank you. And I'm joined by Sick Jake 49.
Sex Jake, that's me. Thanks, GP. I'm just glad to be here, as always.
So good to see everybody. We are today talking about tabletop RPGs, not video games, for the first time in the past, I think, 98 episodes or so. I think all three of us are pretty passionate about tabletop RPGs. We each have our own history and our own take on the subject. Before we get to that, though, I do want to, just as a fun aside, I had this idea, not today because I don't wing stuff. I thoroughly think this out. But I have decided whenever we don't have the full dais here, when we don't have all 5 of us, but I'm included in however many, I will be playing a game in which casually, I don't want to force it, but casually I will be mentioning as many 80s rock bands as possible, just in passing. Again, I'm not going to force it. This is an idea that came to me during a journey when I was flying with the Eagles with my friend Billy and Joel. Billy was a queen, and one of my no, I can't use Fleetwood Mac. Hold on. He was a Def Leppard. Okay. Anyway.
Oh no! I just had a joke come up in my head that's horrible. I don't know that I want it to. Well, it has 9 arms and sucks.
Okay, I know the answer, but I'm not going to say it. Jake, do you know the answer?
I'm gonna pass on that one.
Yeah.
Def Leppard.
Hey, I love Def Leppard. So let's move on.
Anyway, I just thought everybody should know the genesis of the idea. So yeah, let's keep it going. Okay. tabletop
Let's
RPGs.
fill in the Collins here. Let's go.
I love that. I love that. And so do my friends, both Peter and Gabriel. Without further ado, before we start the episode, a little bit more ado, let's have a disclaimer. Sinistar.
Yeah. So a lot of stuff. Okay, let's go back to a week ago when we're trying to figure out what we were going to be talking about today. And Jake and GP and I have kind of always wanted to talk about tabletop games. And so we decided to talk about tabletop games. And then a document was leaked. And because it's a leaked document and there's no confirmation, everything that we were going to talk about here with Hasbro / Wizards of the Coast / the open game license is opinion. And I feel like we need to call it out because I feel like there's a potential here for slander. So it's all opinion.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Thank
I
you for
mean, we're
that.
not experts on this material. We're just three schlubs who talk about video games once a week, and now just for today, tabletop games. And it's that's just what it
Yep.
is. But we're not the only ones talking about this. Believe me, this week has been just an not to use a swear, but a crap show across the online community of tabletop role playing games as they just hear about this. I don't know how you want to explain it. Maybe I'll let you explain it, Sinistar. But what a blunder this is on Wizards of the Coast and Hasbro.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about history. So TSR back in I think 99 sold to 98 or 99 sold to Wizards of the Coast, and when Wizards of the Coast purchased them, they were acquired shortly after by Hasbro. And in the middle of this whole um, purchase and all of those things, TSR / D&D was coming up with the new rule set, which was D&D Third Edition. And as part of Third Edition, they came up with a rule system called the D20 roll system. And they wanted to make it so that the community at large could actually enhance and provide additional benefits and modules and stuff. So they created what's called the open game license. And the open game license basically said you can use our rules. You know, there's some specifics here, but basically you have a license to produce a product that uses the D20 system for your own product. And we saw, they released 3.5 shortly after, and then with fourth edition, we saw an actual like fracture, but because of the OGL license, Pathfinder came out of it, and Pathfinder was able to use the D20 system. We have a couple other players, large players, Cobalt Press. I'm sure that there are others, but I mean, there are modules aplenty that use the D20
Yeah.
system.
And like what I was
So
reading up on it, the way that some people explained it was at the time, Wizards wanted to focus on the content and books that would make the most money, right? Every player is going to buy a player's guide and maybe the class options and whatnot. But the only people buying the adventure modules were DMs and not even that many DMs. So for them, by having the OGL and having third parties make those adventures, which are expensive to make and graphics and design and write, and it's only being sold to a smaller audience, let them do it, because all it means for Wizards is more people are playing D&D, which is what they wanted
right.
at the time, right?
And in all honesty, now fourth edition aside, through third edition 3.5 and fifth edition, I think each one had an uptick in the quantity of players. The
Yeah,
amount of people
huge.
that play fifth edition is huge. Like, I mean, it's all over YouTube, Critical Role, everybody else. You know, I see Twitch streams all the time that are live D&D sessions. I mean, this really is kind of the the cash cow that was born out of this, right?
Yeah,
It
and like you
brought
have the pandemic as well, brought an even further bump in numbers as people started doing this online, right? I think most people who play D&D these days have at least done a handful of games at the very least on Roll20 or other virtual tabletops. I know
yes,
that's what I was doing for
yeah,
the longest while. And it kind of give you a chance to play that the very social experience with your friends online now. And that for D&D today is huge money potentially for
yeah.
something like Hasbro.
Now that said, I think we should, when we originally wanted to talk about this, we actually wanted to talk about the gaming, right? We wanted to
Mhm.
talk about the product themselves. So, maybe we can talk about that for a little while, and then we can talk about what's going on with the proposed changes, the the leaked proposed changes anyway. But yeah, so if you're okay, I'm going to talk about a little bit of my history with role playing games.
Before you do, I have a quick
Yeah.
question about the 5th edition thing.
Mhm.
Um, are there plans or have there been any announcements or anything for a new edition?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So I think the next edition, and maybe it's already anyway. I know that I saw as part of this leaked document that they were potentially going to release the new rule set with this new OGL version. Um, there have been some changes, and this might be what I'm thinking of. Like they've done some inclusion changes, some removed some unfortunate phrasing and names and stuff like that. As I think they should. And I think that might be 5.1, although 5.1 maybe coming out in the future. So
Gotcha. Okay.
um,
So yeah, I'm sorry. Let's get back to it. Yes, tell us your history and let's
all
dive
right.
in.
So I was a child in the 80s. So I was around when there was all of the what do they call it, the D&D, like the Satan
Oh,
worry, the
Satanic
um
Panic.
yeah, the
yeah.
satanic
The
panic,
Satanic
thank you.
Panic,
Yeah.
yes.
And funny enough, I think I think that might have been what intrigued me. Not like from a standpoint of like, oh, I want to be evil and I want to do the wrong things, right? But more there's a game where you play with your friends and you can r- do your own adventures. And
Right.
it kind of came out of those what do they call the documents that guy created anyway?
Satanic Panic.
Well, no, but there was like anyway, it's fine.
Oh, Chick
But
Tracks. Are you talking
the
about the
chick tracks,
comics?
thank you. The chick
The
tracks,
religious
yes.
comics, yes, where he
Yeah.
slandered he hated D&D and talk about quaffing
Yeah.
potions as a leading to the devil worship. Those are funny for all the wrong reasons. I love those things.
Yes. So I think that kind of intrigued me. And then come junior high, I met a friend whose dad played Dungeons and Dragons. And
That's how you know it's
one
cool.
yeah, oh yeah, like my kids are into Dungeons and Dragons because I played it, right?
Oh, yeah.
But I went over to his house one day and out on the table were these hexagonal maps, and I was like, "What is this? This is cool." And he said D&D, and I was like, "Oh, I've heard of that." That's the satanic shit. Um, no, so his dad was cool and basically let us, use his rule books and use his modules and everything, and we spent countless hours in the basement. This was AD&D, so this was technically, I guess, second edition AD&D.
Right.
Um, and then at that point I kind of started branching out because I love fantasy and I love that well, Dungeons and Dragons and warriors and barbarians and stuff, but I also have a real interest in, well, cyberpunk. I mean, I was the guest on the cyberpunk episode, right? And
Mhm.
so I found this game called Shadowrun, right? And this was early high school now. And it was great. It tickled all of the, or itched all of the spots that were, wanted that cyberpunk plus magic, right? I mean, it had all of those kinds of things. Um, and then, as I met other friends, we started playing D&D again. So I kind of came back around to D&D. This was 3.5 edition era. They went to fourth edition, played the hell out of fourth edition. I bet you I have my books somewhere, but I won't put them on the shelf because anyway. Um, but I played the hell out of it, and Sinstress actually played for a long time with us. We used to go over to a family that we were friends with, and their kids and our kids, and some of the adults would play. And then I realized that it was really just a board game in book form
Mhm.
versus like kind of that imagination. Like it really drove
Mhm.
like the miniatures, where I love the kind of D&D where I don't necessarily have to have a map. You can actually imagine it in your head. And so fifth edition came back, or brought that back. And so I've played fifth edition since it came out. I have, I'm gonna bingo everybody. I have this. I have the Ravenloft module right here. And I have
It's
a
a Rush
backpack.
album, sir.
Yeah.
For those
Sorry.
playing the home game and listening on the audio version, Sinstar pointed at a shelf, so please mark that on your bingo card.
Yes. Um, And then I have a backpack with all of the kind of the additional, module books. That's probably 60 pounds of books. I mean, I
You've
have
probably
spent
spent
thousands of
hundred
dollars.
thousands. Yeah, like you
I
spent a
probably
lot.
am over. I'm over $1,000 at least.
Wow.
So,
Okay.
not to mention, dice. Like I have my metal dice and my dice rolling,
Oh yeah.
tray right here, and
Odds
you
are, if
know,
you play D&D, you probably have a bag of dice somewhere in your collection. I think
yeah,
I do as well.
And no retirement plan.
yeah.
Yes.
Other than to just continue to play D&D in retirement.
Oh, my retirement plan is another Wizards of the Coast project called Magic the Gathering. I
Oh,
have a whole
nice.
bunch of those cards.
MTG. Yeah. Right.
So, but yeah, the role playing game, I love getting together with friends. I love the camaraderie of it, drink gallons, hundreds of gallons of Mountain Dew, you know, ate Cheetos upon Cheetos upon Cheetos, yeah.
You can buy Mountain Dew in gallons? I love that.
I've had enough that we're probably
That you would
talking
convert
drums.
drums. I
Yeah.
love that. Very good. How about
Yeah.
you, Jake? Where did your D&D obsession start?
Yeah, honestly, not much different than Sinistar. I started in elementary school. I played AD&D second ed. I don't think I understood a damn mechanic in that book, though. Trying to understand how you hit something and that THACO nonsense. But I was into it because it's mostly my way to socialize with friends, which, as an awkward kid in school, didn't have a lot of that. So that was my social outlet when I was really young. And then in high school, in fact, all throughout high school, yeah, we played a lot of third edition. We also branched out though into other games like Rifts and Palladium games and
Hmm.
a lot of
Hmm.
Battletech and stuff. And for a while, we were actually into, because D20 was so easy to mess around with and add to. We did a lot of our homebrew stuff, right? Custom classes and spells, all of which not balanced, not tested, but we did it anyway because it was fun, right? And it was easy to do. The D20 system was so easy to understand, and it was used in multiple games at the time. Like I played the Star Wars version for a while,
Hmm.
and
Mm.
it was adapted in so many different ways. It's so easy to use. I mean, even video games like KOTOR, like Knights of the Republic, is one of my favorite RPGs. Uses the D20 system. I love the
Does
hell
it?
of the D20. Yeah, so it's fantastic. So I did that, and then I stopped playing for a decade. I think it wasn't. I didn't even bother with fourth edition. I read the reviews and I saw the mechanics. I didn't like the direction they're going with it. I never played with miniatures in D&D. For me, if I want to play with
Mm.
miniatures, it was Battletech. It was like those strategy games,
Sure,
tabletop
sure.
games, role playing games. It was imagination. That was my goal. So I didn't play until fifth edition came out, and I'm a much older adult with kids, and yeah, I play with coworkers. We used to do a regular game, and it's the first time I've done a D&D campaign, and we made it from levels 1 through 20. It took multiple years, but we did it,
Yep.
and that's the first time. It was under fifth edition, and fifth edition took everything I loved about third and made it even better and more easy to run and more streamlined. And I'll mention this later on in the episode, but the thing about fifth edition that stuck with me is when I was running the game, because nobody wants to be DM, so I ended up doing it, is it allowed me to be a better bullshitter. I can make
Mhm.
stuff up on the fly. And that was always the critical thing as a DM. How can I run the game that my players will like and be fun without getting into the math? I was never a Pathfinder guy. I respect the hell out of Pathfinder and Paizo, but there's just too much going on in that system, and I don't have time to memorize a book. Fifth edition let me do my own thing, and I could run a fun game out of my head, and I loved it for that.
Right.
And then I guess we had what's going on this week, and it's been a total mood killer on behalf of
Yeah.
Hasbro. So
Yeah, I guess we can transition into that. For those that are unaware, so we talked about the open game license. Technically, the revision that is used by basically everything to this point is 1.0a. The version that was leaked, a leaked document, called it 1.1, and basically they they realized that other people were making money, but
yeah,
but but they basically said, "Hey, yeah, we're an 11 billion, whatever billion-dollar company per year, and now we want a piece of your pie. Even though we've been a happy participant, you've actually driven, value back to us by producing these items. Now we want a piece of your pie.
Yeah.
Um,
And
and
like
and oh, go ahead.
and like they're looking at things like protecting their more of their mechanics and their IP and their
Mhm.
copyright materials, looking at cutting into the businesses that started off of their OGL, like Pathfinder. I think it was
Mhm.
the leaked document said something. If you make as a company more than $750,000, they want 20% or something obscene.
Yeah,
But basically, explicitly going out of their way to go after the bigger players that make content for the system. And like they were silent all week while the community was in an uproar, and they only announced today why they were talking about changing. They're trying to backpedal a little bit on the changes that were mentioned, but the three reasons they gave: one is they were trying to protect D&D and their property for being used by people who would do what do you call it? Racist, bigotry, that kind of thing, which okay. Two, they were trying to avoid D&D being scooped up into Web 3.0 and NFTs and crypto and whatnot. And then the third one was they said the intention OGL was never for it to be used as a basis for businesses to compete with D&D. All three of those are bullshit. Like, yes, okay.
yeah.
The bigotry and the racism thing, just real quick, I got been pent up all day with this stupid issue.
Please,
Give it to
But
please.
the
me. Let's hear it.
bigotry and the
Yeah.
I'll
racism,
drink
like,
some water.
it's just like you don't need to change your legal agreement or your open gaming license to stop hatred or D&D being used for hatred. If anybody makes a book or a podcast or a live stream that's using D&D for hate, you can still go after them legally as a company if you want to. The community will also tear that thing down pretty damn quick.
Yes.
I mean, anytime there's been any like homophobia or bad actors in the space, they've been taken down pretty quickly in terms of being shut down. So that was one is nonsense. Two, who the hell? You're okay? You're against NFTs, Hasbro? Really? I mean, that's great. I don't want to see that either. But you can't tell me Papa Hasbro has not looked at the concept of NFTs and said, maybe we can get on that if people would back us behind it. You don't think they want to jump on the NFT train with Magic the Gathering? Fuck yeah, they are going to. I'm glad they're not. They're saying they're not going to. But this feels like such an excuse. Go ahead.
Can I interject at this point, because they have an intellectual property system called Magic the Gathering. You just mentioned it.
Yeah.
That is essentially physical NFTs,
Yeah.
right? Which I'm actually okay with, because if I can own something that gains value and 30 years down the road, if I've kept it in good condition, it's still mine, which I don't think anything digital will be, right?
Yeah.
I don't trust that. But if I have something physical 30 years down the road that I can turn around and sell, that's fine.
Yeah.
That's fine. They already have an NFT system that's a good version of
Yeah.
NFTs, right?
And for them to turn around and say that, oh, we're changing the OGL because we want to avoid crypto, that's nonsense. And the third reason, saying that they basically don't like the idea of the OGL being used by other companies and becoming like these founding businesses that compete with them. It's been 20 years. 20 years. We've had Paizo, we have Cobalt Press, we have MCDM. There's so many companies that have been built off of this. And you're saying 20 years later, you didn't agree, you didn't want this to happen originally? Come on, man. Like everything they said in their statement today was total backpedaling and damage control. And it just frustrates me because Hasbro and Wizards, they're the same company at this point. They have been for a while. But they've been doing this, and then also with Magic the Gathering a few months back with the 30th anniversary edition, which is supposed to be something to celebrate Magic for the fans. And they're like $1,000 for this pack
Right.
of 6 randomized boosters.
Right.
It's not for the fans. It's not for the community. I don't even know if it's for collectors. Anyway, everything that they've been doing with their properties has been pure greed and just giving the middle finger to the community that built up these hobbies into what they are today. They would not exist as a company without the fans and what they've been doing. It's just so insulting and so frustrating as a fan of this stuff. But anyway,
I feel like Gary Gygax is rolling over in his grave, honestly.
Yeah.
Like
it's wild.
this guy was photocopying books from the beginning to like get people interested and to play his games, right? Like
Yeah.
this guy just wanted people to play games with, right?
Like, can you imagine if you
Yeah.
said, Gary, we're going to have an online system called D&D Beyond where players are going to pay a monthly subscription for content. Can you imagine
Right.
what he would think about that? Like,
Right.
I didn't even know that was a thing until this week. Really, people are paying for D&D Beyond? You're paying for that? Come on.
Mm,
Like, okay,
yeah.
it's wild. Anyway, we
It,
shouldn't talk the whole episode about this, Sinistar. But the OGL change is total ass,
some
I think.
It's a bad look.
something interesting that I think is I actually something that I appreciate that's come out of this, right? Because who knows? Hasbro may entirely backpedal and say, we're not releasing a new OGL, right? They could entirely. But the problem is they have lost the trust at this
Yeah.
point, right? And so what I love is like Cobalt Press put out a video because their servers were getting smashed because people wanted to get information on this. But they put out a video saying, hey, we have some stuff that we're working on now. We're going to release that under OGL, but we're actually going to create our own new system. And on top of that, we're putting into the writing that this can't be owned. Like
Yeah.
this agreement or this license can't be owned. And I love this because I'm a Linux guy for 20 something years, right? They're actually looking at groups like the Linux Foundation to maybe own this license.
Oh, this is Paizo. Yes.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
sorry, Paizo. Yeah,
Yeah.
I love this concept. Like this to
Yeah.
me is great.
Well, they've said
You
they're
know?
putting this in the trust of a law firm for now until a nonprofit can be set up to manage it. And so that's exactly what they said. We don't own it. Nobody's going to own it. It's going to be a
Yeah.
pure open license like it was meant to be in the beginning. A couple of the guys that work for Paizo, that run Paizo, used to work at Wizards when OGL was first crafted. So they know what the intent was, and they're trying to make
Right.
good on that, this is the day when tabletop RPGs fracture into a dozen different products. And you now have you always had choice. Now you have so much more choice going forward. You don't
Right.
need to play D&D anymore, at least not exclusively.
So, go ahead.
No, it kind of comes down to two of the main nerd influences from my childhood. What do we want to see more of? Willy Wonka style leadership or James Halliday, Ready Player One, the Oasis kind of thing?
Yeah.
Both
Yeah.
similar. Okay, I'm dying. I'm going to give it away. But leading up to that, like we're at a very interesting fork in the road here. With everything that's going on with all of the major uh, multi-billion-dollar things out there with
Right.
technology and gaming and information exchange. Do we want everything coalescing or do we like the branches? I kind of go branches.
I like a mixed market. Like
Yeah.
I think you do need some big players to keep the market going, right? Like one of the concerns that I have with fracturing to a point is, does role-playing game systems go back into a level of obscurity? Like one of the things that D&D has done is great publicity.
Mhm.
Who doesn't know D&D these days, right? Like
Right.
you
Right.
can talk to a jock about D&D. You can talk to a nerd about D&D, right? And so my concern with more options is I remember you talked about Palladium games, right? Like I love Rifts. I
Yep.
loved all of those, right? But the problem is there was a large amount of fracturing during that time period, and we ended up having very few players fall out of it because it was so fractured, right? And so I worry that we're going to see that again.
Yeah, and there's
So
costs involved too of like how many of these games do you want to get invested in, because some of these can be quite sizable in how much money you spend. I had a number of Rifts books. Looking back, I wish I did not spend so much money on Rifts because it's a game that nobody plays these days. I actually have our hardcover anniversary edition of Rifts, and I thought, oh, it's in mint condition. I wonder if this is worth any money. It's like worth like $40. I think that's less than what I paid for it back in the 90s.
probably,
So,
probably.
but at least with the fracturing, you have more choice.
Mhm.
And the idea of tabletop gaming and fifth edition helps spear this. Again, the less on the crunch of the rules and more in the power in the hands of the players and the DM to tell the story. And there's a lot more games these days that do that more streamlined and a little bit more rules light, which I like. We didn't have
Right.
that before. The rule systems aren't as complicated as they used to be. Right, trying to explain Rifts and AD&D second edition to somebody, they're probably going to learn one, not both, and that's
Right.
not as much of an issue these days.
Right, but okay, if you look at the machines that are kind of spurring some of the growth here, you have kind of two different things, and it's a really interesting time to be alive, like the macro of this. But one of the main fuels in the fire is nostalgia. You have these
Mhm.
people who have grown up and played, D and D and these types of games their whole life, who continue to do so, and then you have some people who grew up playing it, took time away because they had to refocus on life or become adults and various things, who are now, because of nostalgia and things being celebrated from the 80s, or referenced constantly, whether it's music, you know, um, pop culture things nowadays, like Stranger Things, that just in their fourth
Right.
season did the
Yeah.
whole D&D Satanic Panic. I mean, they reference D&D as a cornerstone of friendship from the 80s and all that kind of stuff. So you have those two things fueling them, but then you also add things like these kids who grew up playing this, these games taught them how to think strategically.
Oh yeah.
And so now that they're adults and capable, they're like, I can put my own spin on this and do a Kickstarter. The amount of
Right.
money that we have sunk
Yeah.
into Kickstarter, even today, and this is something that my wife got me for a Father's Day present like a year and a half ago. Today it came in the mail, and it's Avatar Legends, which is a
Mm.
D&D-esque sort of thing based in the Avatar: The Last Airbender world, which I am a huge fan of. So I
Yeah.
can't wait to. I mean, I almost called in sick to work today, the podcast to play this, but I'm so excited because I've got all these things to look at and all these new dice and all these new books, and so I mean, it's really kind of this perfect storm that I don't know will be here in 10 years, but
Yeah.
between still coming up with new things, and I know we'll talk about Hero Quest later, the nostalgia, having
Right. Right.
fundraisers and crowdfunding to reissue. I don't know. It's just it is this, and then all the COVID stuff. It really, I don't know. It's an interesting time for this, and I know that was all the words, and I probably won't say anything for the rest of the podcast.
No,
But I mean, think about it. There's
I
no
gotta
way
say,
to
GP,
stop
what a
this right
coincidence
now.
this is, though. So you just mentioned Avatar Legends. That's a game I wanted to play too, by the way, but I missed the Kickstarter. But what's
Okay.
interesting is the system that powers that is called Powered by the Apocalypse. That's the same system that was influenced Ironsworn. So when I talk about
Okay.
Ironsworn, it's basically the same idea as Avatar Legends. There's definitely their own spin on it, but they're
Mhm.
very similar systems, and it's a very rules light system, which I don't know if we want to talk about now or later. But
Well,
Well, I
and
wanted
and
to.
you also
Oh,
have kind of like, well, I'm sorry, just the main core of different working systems, and we can talk about this again later. But then you have so many IPs going into it that it's almost
yes,
in excess. So yeah, just had to throw that in there. But
um, no,
sorry,
I
thank
wanted
you.
to touch on something that you talked about a minute ago, Jake, where um I think that there's a value for both streamlined systems and for the crunchy rules. I think
yes,
that there is. There are players. When I was a teenager, I loved the crunchy rules. Like I love Shadowrun. I mentioned Shadowrun. Those rules are super crunchy. Like
yeah,
you have to figure out like your burst rate on your gun and where you hit the person in the body and blah blah blah. Right? Like, and so battle like a what would be like a 2-minute battle takes 6 hours to role play. Right?
right,
And I loved that as a kid. As a kid, I loved that aspect. And I think part of that coming to GP is, I think you mentioned this, GP, or was it Jake, where, we grew up learning strategy from games, right? And so, but now as an adult, I have a lot of value on my time, right? And
right.
so I, I bought, hey, we're pointing again, bingo again. I
No, no,
bought
no. You only
the,
get the one spot.
Yeah, you look at the one spot, man. What do you try to pull here? No scams.
I bought the anniversary edition of Shadowrun,
Hmm.
and I got a group together. I think Brother Sin was there. He can probably mention this in chat, but we tried it out and we were like, "Oh my god, how long does a round last?" Like,
Yeah,
we were 20 minutes around, right? Like, and so but there are people that love those crunchy rules. And there are systems that still exist. I have one right behind me of GURPS. GURPS is a very crunchy system. It's been around for 30 plus years, right?
it's
And
another old
so
one. Yeah,
it is. And the great thing about GURPS is it's generic universal role playing system, right? So if you want to do vampires, if you want to do fantasy, if you want to do spacefaring, if you want to do steep or water, battles, etc., it works. But it's also very, very, very crunchy. And
right.
so I think there's a lot of value in those, and those systems still exist, and those systems are not tied to the OGL. So
Right.
by all means, if people are listening and want those crunchy rules, Shadowrun, GURPS, I'm sure. Well, Pathfinder, but that's a D20. But
Those are
if you're
the
into those,
string theory of the tabletop RPG type games.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. But the problem that I run into is I look at systems, and I'm segueing here for you, Jake. I look at systems and they're not streamlined, right? Like
Right.
D20 fifth edition, right? So you've been talking to us about Ironsworn. I picked up the rules. I haven't been able to read them much, other than I saw some of the initial dice rolling stuff, and it intrigued me. It was really
Yeah.
cool. So yeah,
So yeah, so Ironsworn's an indie RPG. I think his name is Sean Tompkin, I believe his name is. And although indie, and it was small, but it's kind of blown up over the last few months. And this would have been one of my game of the year picks, honestly. But then you guys are like, oh, don't do tabletop.
game
What
of
did
the
you
year
get? You got Circus
2023.
Charlie. I don't remember what my game of the year was, but it would have been realistically on paper, it would have been
Clumsy
Ironsworn.
3D.
Right, that's the one. Yeah.
Ironsworn.
Because so here's the thing with Ironsworn is it's almost like Skyrim meets tabletop in that it's gritty, it's brutal, it can be very difficult, but it's very light on mechanics. The core of it really is 2d10 and a d6. You roll a d6, add a stat, and it's usually +1 to 3, and then you compare it to 2d10. If you beat 1 d10, you get a partial hit. Beat 2, it's a full hit. Beat none of them, and it's a fail. And usually when you fail, you have to do something called pay the price, and then you usually take damage and whatnot. But it's very limited in light in rules, but what they call moves, right? Whether it's engaging in combat, they call it enter the fray, or trying to secure an advantage, and whatnot. But it's very light in the terms of moves. But the mechanics to resolve the moves is so easy and so easy to do. You can use the material from the book and roll in tables, or you can just make it up as you go ad hoc on the fly. The reason what drew me to Ironsworn, though, is that it's a role-playing game that can be done in groups. You can have a DM, but it's really meant for either solo play or co-op play with no DM. Just 2 to 3 friends doing it together, and you're kind of collaboratively telling a story, a narrative, using the very light mechanics that are in the game. And it's just, I invite everybody who's listening or watching, go to DriveThruRPG. Ironsworn is free, PDF.
Yeah.
You can download for free. You can get a hardcover book if you want. There's add-ons for it that cost money, but the base rules are free. It is worth sitting down, reading that book. It's not very long, and then trying to play a game just for yourself. And I can play, and I do play. I play at least twice a week. Sometimes 25 minutes, 30 minutes. Sometimes I'll play for an hour and a half. It's light enough that I can sit down with a deck of cards I use for dice rolling, and I use an app called Iron Journal. It's like a web browser thing. I can run a campaign on my own or with my daughters and have fun in 30 minutes or do longer. And it's amazing to me. And it's just so much flavor in the world building. Like there's something called truths, right? Like you're basically playing equivalent to a Viking, and you're fleeing your land into this new cold frozen wasteland, or whatever you want to call it. You can theme it to whatever you want. But the reasons you're fleeing that land, the reasons that you move to this new undiscovered country, how your people live, the communities, the lore, how things are done with religion and magic, and all these different facets are told in the beginning of the story by rolling on these random tables that generate the truths.
Mm-hmm.
And you use those to kind of just tie things together. And again, it leans heavily into your bullshit ability, right? The ability to tear a story and weave a story, a tale on the fly is so strong with this game. And that's why I love D&D. It was always the narrative, the storytelling.
Yeah.
Yes, there's combat. It's not like D&D, and that's okay. I like D&D combat too. I like BattleTech and tactical stuff. But I like what Ironsworn does. It's a different kind of tabletop role-playing game where you tell a story that feels great. And it's just such a great experience.
You like BattleTech, huh? Talk about crunchy rules.
Yeah. Oh, trust
Hey,
me, I know.
did you generate hit? Did you generate heat on that shot? Tell me, where did you generate heat? Do you have enough heat
Yes.
sinks on your mech?
How many
get to fill
knuckles
things.
contacted the cheek?
Yes, it is
I love
very
BattleTech.
crunchy.
But I'm looking forward
loved
to
it too.
Avatar, GP, because you got to tell me when you play Avatar, because it's using similar system to Ironsworn. I mean, it's very different, but I love Avatar's IP. And if it's the same narrative storytelling that's in Ironsworn, I got to buy that game because I love Ironsworn.
Yeah. I'll keep you up to date. I might send you Marco Polo tonight with some of the stuff from the unboxing because honestly,
Yeah.
everything looks very crisp and the smell is there, and everything
Mm.
is cool. Yeah, as we play more or start to play and get into it, I'll let you know. But I have no doubt it's going to be great. And it is not just, I mean, it's the whole world from the Avatar. So it's all the stuff with Aang, but then there's also all the chorus stuff. So I'm
Yeah.
yeah beside myself with excitement. It's going to be great.
So Ironsworn, the guy that created Ironsworn, created another one that's space based. It's kind of you. How did you describe it? It's No Man's Sky meets
Yeah,
what?
Firefly or Star
Yeah.
Wars. It can be really themed to whatever you want that's space based. Like it's very powerful in that regard. Yeah.
That one I'm really interested in, and I know I can get the rules for free right now, but I
Yeah.
love books. I love the collecting of books, and they
Yeah.
haven't produced their book run yet. So
Yeah. I
uh,
kickstarted the digital version of it, so I have the digital copy, but I think the physical stuff's going out just now. Oh, we lost
no,
GP.
we lost GP. Things are going to look weird on the podcast.
That's okay.
If you're listening in audio, you're fine.
Oh, there's GP.
Welcome back.
That was weird. Everybody froze up and disappeared. I'm so sorry. Was that me or was that?
That was you.
Uh, Jake and I were still talking,
Oh,
so
so
Look, I
sorry
know
about
we're
that.
talking a lot, GP, but geez, it's okay.
No, no, my computer didn't yawn. I don't know what happened. I'm so sorry, but I promise I didn't go anywhere. Let's keep going.
so all right. Well, um, what else do we want to talk about uh, tabletop RPGs, or do we want to make a transition
I think
at this point?
let me just say that the D&D OGL stuff. I know that honestly, it's probably a minority of the community who play Dungeons and Dragons who probably are upset about this. But for those who are really upset about what Wizards is doing, you don't have to play just D&D. There are so many games. Like Drive Through
Yeah,
RPG has hundreds of fantastic solid titles that are all worth a look. Many of them are free,
yeah.
some of them are cheap, and there's like from Numenaria to GURPS to Ironsworn,
Mhm.
there's so many. If you are
Well, a
upset
new
with Wizards, try a different game. Yeah.
Numenaria actually kind of stemmed out of Planescape Torment, I think,
Well, the
if I
third
remember right,
edition,
which was a
one of the
D&D.
authors was Monty Cook. So he worked at
Mhm.
Wizards and he helped make third edition. When he left Wizards, he wanted to start a new RPG system, and he did Numenaria system. I think he calls it the Cipher system, and it's also a different take on role playing. It's great too in a different way, but it's good.
Nice. Yeah. And if you haven't gotten into role playing games, there's a lot out there.
Yeah,
Yeah, it can be overwhelming. Um, as with starting any new role playing game. So do some research, talk to people in your orbit. It's very interesting, I think, the community of people who are into this sort of thing because, um, God, how would I want to compare this? If I was going to make an analogy, the people who are like openly out there about it, like, hey, check this out. This is a part of my life. They're going to be a little too intense and maybe a little too extreme. But if you
yeah,
put your feelers out there, and there's people who are like, "Oh yeah, it's a nerdy thing I do. I'm into it." That might be, that's your
Yeah.
crowd, that's your group. That's kind
yeah,
of how I am. Um, but yeah, it can be overwhelming. One thing I love about my wife, and I got to show some love to a couple different people real quick. First and foremost is my wife. She is completely addicted to supporting these Kickstarters and the crowdfunding, and so
Mhm.
we are constantly getting in new games. Like I said, with Avatar today, a couple months back, we got Eternal Darkness 2. If anybody's familiar with the Eternal
Mhm.
Darkness games, Gloomhaven, which we'll talk about, and
yeah.
Frosthaven, and all these things. And you had mentioned all this stuff about Hasbro. We never heard back from Thermos, which is okay. So if Hasbro maybe wants to get in on sponsoring, just don't listen
Well,
to
I
the
don't know
first
about
half of the
Hasbro.
episode tonight.
Yeah.
But Hasbro
If
is responsible for so much of the stuff from my childhood. On this side of the room, I have Hero Quest and all of these other kind of
Yeah,
board games, and over here is just a wall of Transformers. So right, GP pointing to his walls.
yeah,
Uh,
but I'm pointing at
bingo.
Starscream right there. Starscream.
oh yes, yeah, absolutely. So yeah. Anyway, all that just to say, whatever you're into, you'll find probably an RPG title for it that you can
Yeah.
Yeah.
get involved in.
Like you
Yeah.
mentioned, it
That's all I was
kind of
trying
like
to say.
is a gateway drug, right? A gateway drug into D&D is often board games. Board games can often get people into role playing games, so it's definitely an
Yeah,
influence for people who play board games and crossing over to role playing games.
right. In fact, my okay, well, because I didn't really talk about my history, I'm going to give it real quick if I may.
Yes.
As a
Yeah,
child, I had cousins and family who owned Hero Quest, and before I was really I'm still learning how to read, just kind of starting to play Final Fantasy games and getting into all of that. But they had Hero Quest and introduced me to that. And playing, as the wizard typically is, the last one to get picked in our group. So I got to be the wizard. And that was just, I loved it. And then forgot about it as life went on. I was one of those guys who grew up nerdy and then had to take some time off to do school and stuff. And then got back in
Right.
touch with my nerd roots. Anyway,
Mhm.
and so I got into tabletop RPGs with actually another Wizard property called Castles and Crusades, if you're familiar at all. Um, a friend of my wife's, Casey Christopherson, actually writes for CNC,
Oh,
which is very
cool.
cool. He's published several books and things out there. So we went over to his house one night, and he just had this entire elaborate setup, and we were creating characters, and I was this monk, and just all this stuff, which I used Jong from Final Fantasy IV as kind of the template, and I just fell in love right there. And then my wife, we both nerded out on that, and that kind of got the ball rolling. And now we have, a bit of a collection and really a fondness and obsession with playing these games.
Nice.
Yeah, so that's kind of my history.
One last thing when we're talking tabletop RPGs, it sounds like there's a lot of history within this triumvirate here.
Yeah.
And jump in our Discord if you want to get suggestions, or if you say, "Hey, have you tried this out?" or "I'm thinking about this system." We have a lot of history. We also have a lot of knowledge of what works and what doesn't work. So happy to talk with you about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, if Marvel Snap and Tunic get their own corner of our Discord, maybe we should have a tabletop corner. I would love to be able to, connect with, people in chat and listeners about giving suggestions, receiving suggestions, or,
Yeah.
any of that kind of stuff. I love that idea.
So you're saying I should cut out Tunic and make it the Marvel Snap tabletop zone? I can do that.
No, hell no. No, I think we don't have to cut anything out in Marvel
Done
Snap,
and
but I think
done.
that we could definitely, and what I would love to do is I would love to try to catalog each of the different titles. So I've got a really good organizational system. And one of the things I love about, well, Castles and Crusades, Dungeons and Dragons, a lot of them have comic book character style names,
Mm,
double consonants,
yeah.
whatever, double vowels. So at the bottom of my list here, I've got Arcane. What is that one? Arcane at Aardvarks, which is a bit of a deep cut, CNC, D&D, and then all the way up there, ZZ Top. So yeah,
You got to turn your camera so we can get bingo because
I
you're
can't.
pointing
I
at
just wanted to
stuff.
make the ZZ Top joke.
Okay. All right. By the way, Sinstress brings up, if you've played Firefly the board game, you understand this. Where you have so much fun, you forget to win the game.
You're just happy to be a part of it,
Yeah.
Yeah.
like
And that's
I
a
in
sign
your
like
of
the
a
early
good
counter.
player.
20s.
I like the counter that you've added.
I've been
See how
trying to
many
take it
times I
away, but you
pointed?
guys keep bringing back references. So I'm like, all right, I'll click it back up.
Yeah. All right. Well,
Yes, I appreciate the counter.
I think this is a good transition into board games.
Let's do it.
Yeah.
The other tabletop gaming, right? So, when we originally, sorry, GP, do you want to roll this or do you want me to?
No, I
Okay.
love what you're doing. Keep going with it.
When we originally started talking about this, we were talking about, let's talk about D&D and let's talk about Hero Quest.
Hmm.
Now, Hero Quest is a game from the late 80s or early 90s. It really is a very simplified board game version of Dungeons and Dragons, right? I mean, you have basically some pre-built characters. The rules are fairly short. You basically have a guide that shows you how to set up the board, and you have to basically work your way through to complete a quest, right?
Is this the game where the board has walls and plastic walls you put down into a board to slide them in?
they're cardboard. No, it's not. It's a flat board with
Right.
cardboard cutouts that you put on
Okay.
little stands.
Yeah. I have played this as a kid, but it's so long ago. Yeah.
Part of the brilliant for me, and again, this is the nostalgia of it, but it is so stripped down compared to some of the stuff that is out there now that
Mhm.
it is brilliant. It is the skeleton, the bones of what you want a tabletop game to be. But you've got your four main job classes. Now there are some expansions that introduce new job classes, but for the most part, if they never change the core four, I would be happy. You've got
Right.
brute, you've got smart guys, you've got a mixture, and then just all magic, no muscle,
Yeah.
and do it however you want. If you don't have 4 people to play it, the game still recommends that you use all 4 players, and
Yeah.
it's the exact same. It's the exact right way to do it. I think the original thing comes with 12 to 15 quests, and then they even include extra maps and encourage you to design your own quests and do the stuff. And then you search for money, search for traps, take down everything, and then buy shit at the end. It's brilliant.
Yeah.
It's everything it should
Yep.
be. Not a lot of
Yeah.
frills, but solid.
So GP and I have a history with this game. Like I'm looking over here. Bring up the counter again. Over here off screen, and GP knows this, is my original like 1990 edition of Hero Quest. I think I've told you that before, and you've been kind of jealous that I've had your Hero Quest. Right?
I try to rechannel it from jealousy to just being happy for you.
Well, a couple of years ago, Hasbro has their crowdsourcing division, and I can't remember what they call it.
Are we allowed to show the games? Can I pull the games up?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wait, hold on. Hasbro's crowdsources games?
Yes, it's
$1 billion company Hasbro does like a Kickstarter.
Yes. Well, it's
Come on.
It's you're
That's
absolutely
a big
good.
bucks. Yeah.
Oh, well, I thank you.
Yeah. I'm trying to remember what the
And then this is
what
the
name.
Christmas expansion I got from Santa, which is
See,
wonderful.
I didn't know it had expansions. I thought it was just like a single game in the 80s. I didn't realize it had a life after that.
Well, I don't know how many expansions there were from the original release. I don't know. I don't know if like that one or some of the other ones are new to the kind of revitalized Hero Quest, but they exist and I'm thrilled. I'm here for it.
The
Yes,
sauce
there's
in
an
chat
NES
says
game,
Hasbro Pulse.
Schaefer.
Is the
Hasbro
name-
Pulse.
And then
Hasbro,
Cal Schaefer
yes.
says, yeah, they made a Hero Quest NES game of it too, which is wild to me. Hero
And
Quest, the
my
board
brother has an
game.
arcade game that has it on there, and it's actually really, really fun.
Really?
If you don't mind taking
Really?
the time to, I mean, the controls aren't responsive, so you can hit down, wait a second and a half, then you'll see it go. Anyway, it takes a while to get through, but it is fun. And I think
So,
it's actually the same quests that were from the original board game, like the same storylines and
Yeah.
maps.
So back when they did this Hasbro Pulse, we'll say instead of Kickstarter, we'll say they did this Pulse. When they did this Pulse, I told GP about it, and then I went and got the Uber. Like I was like all in. I was like, give me all the expansions, everything. And then it took I don't remember how long it took for them to ship that to me. I don't remember. It was probably almost a year, I think, from when I backed it to when it arrived.
That's pretty standard.
And
yeah.
But then the problem is the pandemic came along,
Mhm.
and we stopped letting people into our house,
Yeah.
right? And
Same.
so mine are actually still sealed in the cellophane. So
But again, you don't need 4 people to play it. You can just play as all 4 characters. And
You just
in no
Tetris
way
that.
is
You just Tetris
bad
that
or
box.
something I
Yeah.
do
Play by
regularly.
yourself. Yeah.
I thought that there was a game master role.
Well, I mean, yeah, but I mean, if you're honest enough with yourself, you can do both.
All right, fine.
Oh, you know what? Now that I have it, if ever you're alone and you don't want anybody to come over, I will be Zargon for you. It'll be great.
Awesome.
I will DM the fuck out of this for you.
All right.
So
ZM.
Hero Quest has a DM?
ZM.
I thought it was like
No.
It's okay. Go ahead.
Wait. It is actually a Hasbro property, so it may have a DM.
Well, it's a plot point, but it's somebody who sets up the maps and knows where the characters go and how they're going to attack and
Okay.
how they're going to,
Got it.
they run the
Okay.
game. It's
But-
all the characters against.
Okay.
It's
My
Okay.
my calling out DM is a protected term. It's owned by
Oh yeah, GM.
Wizards
But
of
yeah,
the Coast.
I get it. Yeah.
GM. Yeah. Although that's owned by Hasbro, so they could probably call it a DM if they wanted to.
And if they
Yeah.
wanted to sponsor the channel, well, I mean, whatever. They already
Just
have
don't-
most of my money.
Just don't listen to the first
HasLab
half.
people.
Yeah,
Yeah.
just ignore the first 40 minutes of this episode, Hasbro, and you're good. We love
Yeah,
your
scrub
products.
through it.
And,
Even if you fuck them
don't
up all the time, it's okay.
and just stick with OGL 1.08. We're good.
Yeah.
I have a Unicron that proves my loyalty to Hasbro. Okay, so they can go ahead and just eat it.
I don't know. Yeah, Hero
God, weird
Quest.
flex. I'm so sorry. But
I
yeah,
only
Hero
played a little
Quest
bit
is
of
the
Hero
best.
Quest, but there's other fantasy board games I played. Like I played a little bit of Descent in my board game group for a while. I did buy the D&D board games to play with my kids. We started playing through some of that. But I want to talk about Gloomhaven because we're running the episode late. But I
Yes.
want to talk about Gloomhaven because I played the digital version for 10 minutes.
Yeah.
And I feel like I didn't give that game a fair shake because I've heard GP
No.
especially mention how great Gloomhaven was.
I
But
love it.
I heard that it was really bad for the setup time though, right?
Yeah, if you can have a room in your house where you have a permanent table set up for it, that really is the way to do it.
The Gloomhaven
Other
room.
than
Yeah, or a
chasing
game room. Yes. What?
Okay.
other than chasing all of the pieces to change between missions, right? Like that's
I
the thing
love
that
that though.
killed me.
Like, there's a tactileness to it that I just really adore. And we have a lot of games that take a while to set up and tear down. I mean, legacy games,
Yeah.
Pandemic as well.
Yeah.
Those are things that really, if you can, you need to leave it set up so that you're not constantly trying to remember things, because there's enough to remember even with the game setup. But I mean, if you don't mind the time sink and if you can appreciate doing that kind of thing, um, which again, not to keep bringing up stuff like this, but as somebody who loves to, collect like Transformers and little, things that require fidgeting and movement, setting
Right.
up board games is really very cathartic and enjoyable and in its own weird ways then. So I
Right.
don't mind it.
So I have to call out on my Steam replay, they call it the replay or whatever. I have over 100 hours this year in Gloomhaven, the digital edition, right?
It's been 13 days.
No, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
got
The
it. I
replay
know,
from
I'm
2020.
stupid.
Yeah. Okay. So but what's funny is in the replay they troll Gloomhaven because it says, time played like 33% of your time, and then it says the phrasing, I don't remember the exact phrasing, but it's like this is slightly less than the time it would have taken to set up the board game.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
And
You could have done 2 games or 2 quests of Gloomhaven in the amount
Yeah.
of time you spent playing. And
So
it's
on
fair. It's a fair criticism.
on bouncing off, let me ask you this. So
Yeah.
and GPU probably had the same experience. Your first, I don't know how many missions, 3, 5, 6, whatever. That game is hard. That game
Super
is
difficult.
brutal.
Punishing.
You will get
One wrong move,
you will
you're
get
done.
yeah,
Yeah.
you will get just decimated until you start doing the legacy features, which is upgrading your characters, adding
Okay.
cards to your deck, exchanging cards, coming up with combos based on the cards. And that's really where the joy comes into play. And
Yeah.
then the game takes it away from you too. Like this is one of those things where like if you like Darkest Dungeon, there's an aspect of your characters end. Like
Yeah.
you get really comfortable with the character. You're like, man, I'm nailing every single mission. And then the game's like, oh, and your character retired. Now go pick somebody else and start over.
Yeah.
Really? So it's not just death. They
Yeah.
retire.
They retire.
Retirement,
So many
yeah.
games.
Yeah. Uh-huh. No. Not so many
Yeah.
games. There are goals. And there are some
Okay.
that will do it like that you can't really control, but there are some that you definitely can control when the retirement happens. So
Okay.
Yeah. And no, I do appreciate that. And it does kind of force you to deal with an uncomfortable aspect of letting go, which we're all nostalgic people. Can't do that. We all know what it's like to get to the end of an RPG game, Final Fantasy, any number, and be like, I'm not ready yet.
Yeah.
I'm not ready.
Yeah.
I don't want to let go. But I mean, there's always more to do. There's always new adventures. And even if you were to restart Gloomhaven right away after the first or second quest, you really are presented frequently with, left path, right path. Do you want to talk to this person or do what this person is saying? Do you trust this person or go against them? Do you want to give them the thing they sent you on a quest for or keep it for yourself? So, I mean, it's endlessly replayable. And I love that.
Yeah.
And then if you're trying to, they built in the ability to grind as well. If your character's just getting the crap beaten out of it, you can go back and play every single mission. You can go back and play the early easy missions to gain
Okay.
the experience and to level up your character, right? And so it's funny that it's really almost like that aspect is taken from like the video game grind, right? Like
Hmm.
Right.
I found these areas that I can go farm experience from, right?
Yeah.
So, and that's in the game.
Well, and then there's a lot of hitchhiker mechanics too. There's a deck of cards in between quests or on your way to the next
Yeah.
location where you'll shuffle, you'll pull something, and it's, oh, you find this person tending to a broken wagon axle, Oregon Trail. Do you want to
Mhm.
help them or do you want to go on? And then you really do think, okay, again, hitchhiker rules. If I help them, they might shank me and steal something. But if I go past them, they might come back later and be like, "Oh, you didn't help me. Now I'm
Mhm.
going to shank you and steal something." So you're going to get shanked, but it's now or later.
Well,
Yeah, the
shanked
term
or died,
gloom,
dysentery. I mean, I'll take either one, I
yeah,
guess, really.
Yeah,
the
yeah,
the
6 and 1
term
really.
gloom is appropriate for that game.
Yeah,
So,
there's not a lot of light in that
Yeah.
world.
no. But it is a grand game. Sinstress and I and some other friends tried to play the tabletop. The problem that we have is, we played this at their house. We own the game, so it was always pulling it out fresh every single time. They have kids. We had kids that were, younger at the
Yeah.
time, and so, you know, finding greater than 2 hours of time
Yeah,
was hard, right? And so
Yeah.
we bounced off of it there. Um, there apparently are organization systems that you can get that help you with that, so that you can put the pieces in places where you can easily find them, etc.
and
Um,
yeah, there's record keeper apps and stuff like that, so you can tell it exactly where you're at in the game.
but I personally love the digital edition. Brother Sin and my two cousins played this for, well, apparently 33% of my Steam playtime over the year.
So there's online, I
So
guess, support for it as well, then, right?
yes,
Okay.
up to 4 player co-op. It's
Okay.
interesting though, because just like um, Hero Quest, you basically have to have 4 players.
Right.
It's just sometimes multiple people will play, or a person will play multiple characters.
Yeah,
So when you're doing the co-op, you can do 1, 2, 3 player, and somebody or multiple people are going to have multiple characters.
Got it. Okay.
and it's worth mentioning that there is a smaller. It's not a starter pack. It's the game itself, but you can find it at like Target instead of having to order it and have it shipped, and it weighs 80 pounds. But I think it's called Gloomhaven, like Jaws of the Lion or something like that. And essentially, it's just the bare bones essentials for what you need to do these quests. So it doesn't require all the setup and all of that. You
Okay.
could go from unboxing to playing in probably 10 minutes once you know how the game works. So
Okay.
if you don't like setting stuff up, that would be the way to go. But it is definitely worth a play.
Yeah. Like,
And very cool mechanics.
The
Like
sauce.
I just started playing Midnight Suns, Marvel Midnight Suns, where the battle is a combination of movement and cards, right?
yeah, it's
Mhm.
a
A
lot of
deck of
fun.
cards.
Yeah.
And funny enough, that's how Gloomhaven works too. So it
Yeah.
feels very tied in there, right? You have a deck of cards. You expand you play the cards. Some will get recycled when you shuffle. There's also this really brutal but necessary feature where every time your character has to rest, you lose cards from your deck,
Hmm.
and you can exhaust yourself in a mission by resting too much and have not having any cards to draw, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Like my impression of the game was, yeah, it felt like one wrong turn, just one wrong turn, and that entire game is done. Right. At least with the digital copy, you could spin it back up again. But I couldn't imagine playing the physical game and doing one wrong turn and just losing it all. But I
the
mean,
nice thing
yeah,
is you tend to replay that mission, right? So it's
right.
already set up. Um, you may just have to close doors and pull some, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
Okay.
But
Yeah.
but
Find the
um,
starting positions.
but you're right. Early game, one wrong turn will absolutely tank you. As you progress, like toward the end of the game, I'm going to say I felt like I'd have 5 or 6 wrong turns and I'd be
Right.
okay.
So it gets
Now,
slightly easier as you go.
yeah. Now I can't tell you how many times my last turn was like was I couldn't draw cards the next turn, and we just beat the mission like at that point, right? Like
Right.
Yeah.
it feels very skin of your teeth, like
Photo finish.
Yeah.
yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Or you have characters that purposefully exhaust to save the others that can finish that mission, right?
Right.
And
Yeah.
so
Yeah. Meat shield is a definite job class if you want it to be. And I think
yeah.
there's definitely a turning point. Maybe we should say it this way, where to the idea of, one wrong turn, but there's definitely a point where your characters typically seem to develop enough where you feel comfortable going out on your own or saying, you go check
Mhm,
this way, I'll go check this
mhm.
way, as opposed to, okay, let's all stay in a very tight knit crew and go about the dungeon. So, you know, God, now
Yeah.
all I want to do now is play games.
Yeah.
That's all I
Yeah.
want to do.
Well,
I want to meet you guys somewhere. If you want to come to Kansas, or we can meet in Boston or Chicago, that'd be
or
wonderful.
you guys could pick up the digital edition of Gloomhaven, and I would happily play it with you.
I got
We can do that
140
online.
hours I got to put into Final Fantasy X. But as soon as that is done, yes, I will do that with you.
Fair, fair.
All right.
So yeah, Gloomhaven's great.
Yeah, love it.
Yeah. Did we want to talk about any other board games? I mean, I know that there's a plethora, right?
The other one I played a lot of, not so much lately, but Pathfinder. I mean, I wasn't a fan of the tabletop game, but they released a card game a few years ago, and there's so many expansions, so many. It almost turned me off for a while. That's why I stopped playing it. But I have tons of expansions for Pathfinder, and I love to play that game. Love to play that game, and it's a fun card game. But the setup time was just brutal. But they released a digital version of that game. Obsidian did it, and for the brief while they're updating it, I played the heck out of Pathfinder the card game digital version. But then they stopped updating it and stopped supporting it, which is unfortunate because that was a fun game. And that's the only reason I know Pathfinder character classes and heroes is the card game was recreating the early adventures from Pathfinder. And I kind of really dig what Paizo did with their world. It's so much better than what Wizards was doing. Like D&D's fine, but I always found like Faerun and all their campaign settings a little bit dry. Pathfinder's got a very imaginative set of creatures and character classes. I really dig the style of it. I always want to try the tabletop game because of the card game, but it's a bit much.
Yeah. Pathfinder has a lot of heart.
Heart?
No, actually, we did want to talk about when we were discussing this in Marco Polo's. We at least I brought up, and GP brought this up a little bit earlier, but the legacy games.
Yeah.
Right.
I did want to touch on legacy games a little bit, just because it was another paradigm shift for me, right? Like, I grew up playing Monopoly, playing Risk, playing, all of these games where like you keep your pieces in good condition. You watch somebody fold the money in Monopoly and you want to
You
beat them about
cringe.
the ears, right?
Yeah. Don't bend the cards.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Who
Don't
sleeves their cards here
anything.
today? Like, yeah.
Right.
Like,
Yeah. And then
Yeah.
this group of game developers came up with this concept of legacy games where you purposefully
And
do
permanently.
bad things.
Yeah.
Do bad things to your game. Like
rip cards up, stickers on the
oh,
board, marker, writing on cards.
uh-huh.
It's awful. It's
Yeah.
good.
Do
But
you
it's
know what
awful.
you're asking me to do? And you
Yeah.
read the instructions so many times and the words aren't going to change. You're like, destroy card
Yeah.
F4.
Yeah. Rip
This
up
is F4.
the card.
Is this the
Yeah.
right thing? Because I cannot,
Yeah. And so the first time that I had to destroy a card, like it was that like I had to come to terms. Like I think I was openly weeping, probably
Mhm.
ugly crying, and I ripped
Yeah.
it up. Now,
Oh,
the game that really comes to mind is Pandemic Legacy, season
Yeah.
1, season 2. By the end of season 1, I remember there was a card that we were told to destroy, and I was so pissed at this card that I lit it on fire.
Hmm.
Like I was like, I am not ripping this up. This thing is burning, So it's kind of interesting the shift in play.
We passed the first time it told us to destroy a card. We each passed it around like, I'm not doing it, you do it. And really, it was less about like the sanctity of not destroying your game as much as it was, if we later on find out we need this cardigan, we need to have somebody we can blame, and I don't want it to be me. Even though we all knew
Yep.
what was going on. But yeah,
Yeah.
it's like,
The couple times I started that game up, I tried playing with two different groups, and both people I was playing with had the same reaction of, "You want to do what now?" And everybody's Googling, how can I play Pandemic Legacy without damaging the cards? And they were
Right.
trying to find
The saran
exorbitant
wrap.
ways to get around it. Yeah, like
Saran
saran
wrap,
wrap
clear wrap
and
the-
writing on saran
yeah.
wrap and stuff. Because the neat thing about this is, though, like, I didn't finish season 1 Pandemic, so no spoilers for anybody.
Okay.
But you're permanently marking cities on the board with stickers over time. And the idea is,
Mhm.
once you've beaten the campaign, you can still play classic Pandemic in a way on it, but the board has now been customized by your playing group. And that is rad. That is really awesome to think. That in my Pandemic board, Montreal is a hellscape every time we play. Right? That is
Santiago.
got a lot of appeal. Yeah.
Yeah.
Ours is always something bad's happening. Go to Santiago. Let
Yeah.
them deal with it there.
Yeah.
So
It's
can
their
I give
problem.
us can I give a spoiler about Pandemic Legacy season 1? I think it's season 1. Can I give a spoiler? I'm going to give enough time that it's a spoiler warning if people want to not
All
listen.
right. If you don't want spoilers for Pandemic season 1, skip ahead 30 seconds.
Yeah. So there are boxes that you open. There are boxes that you open, and there is a box at the end of the game that was still closed. And we were like, what the fuck is this? We open the box, and the card inside literally says, "What are you doing? This box was never supposed to be open in the game."
Oh, that's fantastic. All right.
So that's it.
I love it. Okay. That's awesome.
Well, it's
The legacy
29,
games are so good.
30.
Yeah.
In spoilers.
Yeah.
Yeah,
If you
legacy
love
games are great.
Pandemic, you've got to play Pandemic Legacy. It's such a fantastic take on it. It's a great spin on it. I've looked at the other legacy games. I think there's one for Risk, and I heard
There
there's
is.
a Monopoly one,
Ooh.
or no?
Monopoly Legacy?
I don't know. There was a co-op ish game called Betrayal at House on the Hill.
Right.
Where
The
the
House on
first
the Hill games
portion-
are fantastic. Yeah.
Yeah, which
Yeah.
at the beginning it's entirely co-op, and then there's a point where they call it the haunting or the
Mhm.
haunt, and one player is selected based on what happened in the game. So there's a huge replayability factor there. But they did a legacy version of that as well.
Okay.
Sinstress and I are actually, I think, like halfway through it with our friends, and then the pandemic happened.
Yeah.
I haven't tried the Legacy version of that yet, but that'll be next on the list. My little clique of people, we made it through season 1 and season 2 of Pandemic. We started season 0,
Mhm.
and I want to say we were halfway through that, and then things really amped up with the pandemic, and we stepped away. So I don't know where it's at, but I know I have copious notes in my phone about where we were and what was going on. So
Yeah.
hopefully we can
Yeah.
pick it up again sometime, but I don't know.
We started season 0 because when the pandemic happened, we knew. It's funny that we played Pandemic during the pandemic. We actually made that joke.
It's a sick joke in a way, but
It
yeah.
is a sick joke. But we knew enough. We had played, the original Pandemic games so many times that like
Yeah.
the rules to us were clear and easy, and so
Second nature, yeah.
yeah, second nature. So when the pandemic hit, our friends set up a board on their table, set up a camera above the board. Everybody met via Zoom. We all basically told them how to move our pieces, etc. And then we tried to play season 0, and season 0 turned so much of it on its head
Hmm.
that we ended up going and buying season 0 ourselves, and we would try to mimic their board and everything. And
Right.
tracking that is a nightmare.
Yeah.
Like,
It sounds
yeah.
like it.
and
Oof.
so we never made it through season 0.
I just remembered this. Our first time doing season 1 Legacy. I'm sorry, this is just a fun little aside.
Please.
I think it was my wife's birthday, and we had an all-nighter or like a 2-night, 3-day all-nighter kind of thing. You know what I mean? We had
Mhm,
the people over,
mhm,
we played, and then in between months, for those of
mhm.
you who know how
Yeah.
it works, we would do 2 things. We would have a contest, whether it was eating hot things or decorating gingerbread houses, to kind of break it up. But then we
Mhm.
also had a confession closet where in between you would go in with the video camera that we had set up on the tripod, and you would look in the thing and you would discuss the game, and then you would talk about like it was a reality show confessional where you're sitting there talking about
Oh
the
my
stuff and
god, I
how
want to see this.
So if you got frustrated with another person playing the game, that was the time to vent. And then, I don't think we ever all sat down to watch it together, but really that's the way to do it. If you can all agree to keep it confidential and never go back and watch it, that is how you should do it to go and blow off steam.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I kind of forgot we did that. That's wonderful.
Now, speaking of skin of your teeth games, like Gloomhaven and the missions in Gloomhaven, Pandemic is as skin of
Oh,
the
every
teeth as you
game.
get.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you feel lucky that you managed to get through a game. It's
Yeah.
brutal. And like the
Well, and
legacy
if you-
games, if you lose, you still
Yeah.
keep going.
Right.
And you feel like
And that's
we're screwed.
well, and
That's
that's the
great.
thing is like
Yeah.
when you lose, if you get a certain amount of losses or whatever, something horrible happens. Like it's
Yeah.
like open box B7, and you're
Yeah.
like, it's like, oh, you were murdered in your sleep. Oh, good. I'm gonna go roll a new character. Thanks.
Yeah, it's great.
So,
It's
yeah.
it's a terrifying concept for somebody who loves board games and wants to preserve them and keep them pristine. But when you get in the spirit of it,
oh yeah,
it's a really fantastic thing. I really do like it.
yeah, for sure.
And before I forget to say this, though, Jake, not to take away from your Montreal setup that you have, but go back, look at the Pandemic board, and look at Santiago. One way in, one way out. It is,
Yeah.
for me, the most logical place to kind of like have a throwaway hellscape.
That makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
They're gonna. We love you, Santiago, but you're going down first.
But it also depends on how the cards get drawn, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Oh, always.
Yeah.
But if ever there is a sacrificial lamb, that lamb is
There's-
Santiago.
there's also the fact that Santiago's so hard to get to that when
Yes.
it outbreaks, you're fucked.
That was
But
usually
when
the
it
problem.
outbreaks,
South
it's
America
only
would
going
screw
one
us every
place.
time.
Sure,
Yeah.
but then if you have a multiple outbreak, then it's just wrecked.
A hellscape.
Well, yeah, but by the time that it gets to that, anyways, it's
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm with you. Oh, guys,
Yeah.
for real. I mean, I know late last year you were able to make it up and meet with some of the other guys in Star, but
Yeah.
whenever we all get together,
Yeah.
we've got to have some games.
We gotta do
We need
some
to
board
make it
games.
happen. We
Yeah,
need to make it
absolutely.
happen.
Yeah.
I think you're central to all of us, GP.
Yeah. So this is where the not outbreak. But yeah,
Pandemic happens.
Yeah. I love it.
Ground
Let's
zero,
do it.
if you will. Yeah.
We'll get a table at Norton's and I'll just reserve it for the whole weekend.
There you go.
And that can be
There you
our
go.
perma setup. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, fantastic. Well,
I love that we did board game episode. I hope we get to do another one, at some point this year, even if we did a couple per year just to talk about, or even do deep dives into, franchises or games. Where did the expansion go wrong? At what point did the expansion start to suck? There's no limit. So, obviously our bread and butter and what we love to do is
Right.
video game discussions. But if we get enough people who like this or enough people in Discord, in our new tabletop game section of Discord, talking about it, maybe we can do a second or a third one at some time if you guys are up
Yeah.
for it.
and two more things: Def Leppard and Tesla.
Damn it, I gotta keep bringing this thing up. Okay, that's 14, I think now. We have to keep score of this, GP. If you want to do this, and next time there's a three-peat of people on.
Well, we're talking next time what I'll do instead of just naming bands, I will find lyrics or song names from one band
Oh,
and sprinkle those in. And then if we have viewers or listeners who guess that and put the correct answer in the Discord section, maybe we can do a giveaway or something like that.
Oh, that could be
Yeah.
If we
interesting.
have some sort of product or sponsor.
awesome. Well, check out our website, pressbtocancel.com. Come join our Discord. You can find out the link there at pressbtocancel.com. If you like this, like and subscribe. Tell your friends.
WAREWULFF. Google it. Tell it you meant it.
Tell you a minute.
Yeah.
Yeah. I got something to
miss you,
promote
Gerard.
this
We miss you,
time,
Wolf.
so we gotta make sure we do that part.
Right.
Well, I guess I'll just do it now. You can find me, Sick Jake, on Twitter sometimes, I guess, but also check out my YouTube, SICJAKE. I am slowly working my way through Battletoads. The Sisyphean episode was the other week, and I am going through with it. I am going to beat freaking Battletoads, warpless, continualess, and I record those runs on YouTube. Check it out if you want.
Don't say slowly though. You're already. You've already beaten the ice level.
Yeah, but off
It's
stream,
been done.
so it didn't happen. So I'm banging my head against the stupid spiky urchin balls. It's so...
Fuck every
Fourth
ice
episode
level
will be
ever.
up tomorrow morning. I have to play after this episode of the podcast, so I'm
Come
going
on,
to
man,
do
13
it.
more weeks. 13 more weeks till April.
13 more months at least. I'm going to be hitting that Wheel of Pain at this rate, but we'll see. But yeah, check me out on YouTube.
Awesome. Well, I'm Sinistar77. I am committing to doing my Wheel of Pain and my playthrough of my Sisyphean game on Twitch. I am committing to that. I don't know exactly when it'll happen. We are filming this. We're doing this on the 13th of January. I have Monday off, which is a few days from now. I may try to do 2 hours of the NES version of Dragon's Lair. I've spun it up. I can't beat the first scene. I think it's going to be 2 hours of that.
And
I love
that's
it.
suitable punishment on the Wheel of Pain. I think that's as intended. That game is trash.
Yep.
And I'm Guy Prime. You can basically just find me here at Press B to cancel. But guys, I got to tell you, for as quickly as I thought I was going to be done with Sonic 2 because of how far I had made it, I am actually struggling with the Air Fortress thing, which I think
Okay.
is at the very end. So it'll take a few more tries, but we'll get there. And then starting up Final Fantasy X for the penance run, which I'm pumped about. But anyway, more on that as the situation develops. But guys,
All right.
yes, thank you again for joining me tonight. Thank you for being as passionate about board games as I am and letting me nerd out. It was great to hear you guys nerd out about it too. And I look forward to continuing this discussion again in the future.
Absolutely.
And everybody, thank you, of course, for watching and for listening. We love you all. We'll look forward to hearing from you in Discord. Until next time, this has been Press B to cancel.
Thanks, guys.
Robot voice?
Wolf's not here.
Wolf's not
I
here.
got
We can't do it.
We didn't need it.
Yeah, goat scream.
Good enough. All right.